For today's double review, we have two point-and-click adventure games. First, the mysterious Night is Grey, and then the Tim Burton-esque Prim. The Night is Grey has been a very long time coming. It was finally released in 2024. This is described as a cinematic thriller, as you play as Graham, a man who is apparently trapped on an island with wolves and other creatures around. The only person he's ran into is a young girl who is missing her mother, and the two decide to set out across the island to figure out what is going on. And the story will certainly take a lot of interesting and strange twists and turns along the way. I love the animation and art style for The Night is Grey. It's all done by hand, and there's some really gorgeous backgrounds throughout the game. Now, as for our puzzle design general gameplay, this is definitely classic point-and-click adventure. You'll explore each chapter, which is divided into a series of rooms or areas complete with MacGuffins, puzzles, and more to uncover. When you move on to the next chapter, you will not return to the previous scene, and any items that you no longer need will of course be happily discarded. The puzzle logic in this one is a little bit on the trickier side. I interviewed the developers, and that interview will probably be going up after this review. And a big portion of the puzzle design was trying to make the puzzles more grounded in kind of the reality of the world. So you'll need to kind of make sense as to what Graham needs at any given point, and then look around for the items or clues to help facilitate that. Now, because of that, it means that clues and items that are in the environment cannot be interacted with until there is a need for it. This can lead to some trickiness and probably some annoyance with some of the puzzles, where you'll know that you need something in the area, but because you haven't found the correct prompt or clue to kind of clue that into Graham, you're not allowed to interact with an object or find an item in said area until you go forward. It makes these puzzles very linear in that respect. The difficulty of this one, I would say, is moderate to moderately advanced. Again, some of it is trying to keep track of the kind of triggers for the various puzzles, as well as just trying to make sense of the world itself. Now, with that said, I do have one big issue with the game. It is very slow to move around and explore. You always have to wait for Graham to walk from point A to point B in the environment, and of course wait for him to do like a little animation or interacting with it. It doesn't sound so bad when I'm saying it, but when you're trying to find a clue or an item and you're going back and forth from scene to scene and you're just not getting it, it slows the game down quite a bit. You can kind of like fast skip from a area transition to the next area, but it's walking between the two areas or from beginning to end that can be very cumbersome. And this becomes more and more frustrating as you get later in, as the sizes of each room become larger. I would advise turning on the hotspot indicator as well, as because of the hand-drawn look, it means a lot of the items and objects can tend to blur and blend into the background. This can lead to some frustration with some of the puzzles, and again, there's a few that I found that it did feel a little bit more annoying to kind of get the solution. It's one of those cases where you kind of know that there's something amiss about it, but there's no real indicator to the player that there is something more to it. You have to kind of know instinctively to go look somewhere else in order to get the clue to then come back and do that specific task. The story is very intriguing, and it does set up a lot of interesting mysteries between Graham, the girl, and why they are both on this island, and why Graham seems to be chased by wolves wherever he goes. If you're looking for a very light and breezy adventure game, The Night is Grey is definitely not going to be it. But if you're a fan of, again, the classics with very challenging puzzles and very beautiful environments to walk around in, I would at least give The Night is Grey a shot. And now we switch over to Prim, that despite dealing with death and the underworld, is a lot more of a comedic and happy game. We play as Prim, the daughter of the Grim Reaper. When her mother sadly passes on, she is then taken by her father to the underworld to live there, study, and maybe someday become a Reaper herself. But When shenanigans and something tragic happens, it's up to her to explore the underworld, meet a very eccentric cast of characters, and maybe learn to love her father after all. For this one, we're definitely going for more on the comedic side of things. Prim is your classic sarcastic teen, who also gets a spider for her eyeball at one point, and you'll need to use it as well as a variety of objects to explore the world. Now, Prim, I would say, is on the shorter side of some of the adventure games that we've played. There's about, I think, 3 major acts, with the second act being the longest. Once you kind of get past the opening, you'll go into kind of a classic point-and-click adventure structure, where the world is going to be mostly open to you, and you'll need to explore looking for items, puzzles, and clues that will help you move in and out, getting the pieces that you need in order to solve the final puzzle and continue the story. I do like the writing and the humor in this one, as it does, again, to kind of like take a lot of the, I guess, seriousness out of, well, dying. And everyone is just so happy to meet Prim, and sometimes will help her in some of the puzzle solving. And I would say in terms of the puzzle logic, Prim is on the moderate side. If you've played any point-and-click adventure game from like the 90s, early 2000s, you should be well suited to playing this one. It can be a little tricky finding hotspots, and I would advise turning on kind of the hotspot indicator once it's unlocked, as everything again tends to blend in the background due to the really great kind of Tim Burton noir art and aesthetic to the game. I only got stuck on a few puzzles here and there, and that was just not being able to spot some of the clues that the game was giving you. All in all, Prim is pretty solid, but it does have a few issues, I think, in a few spots. The first one is that, like our last game, it can be on the slower side to move around. While you can double click to make Prim run a little bit faster, you're still going to be kind of walking from point A to point B. Now on the positive side, the overall rooms and scenes in this game are not that large, so you're not going to be spending too much of a time kind of waiting for Prim to get to where you need to go. There are a decent variety of kind of mini-game puzzles and challenges. The most frustrating one is the kind of like casket ball, like almost like a trading card or very late deck builder minigame. This becomes a major part of Act 2, and you're supposed to hunt around for cards to build a deck in order to kind of move the story along. It can be very time consuming, however, as you'll have to play the same characters over and over again to build a deck of cards that, even with that, can still end up with RNG. And I read on the forums that if you lose enough time, supposedly the game will just let you skip this part, but I lost about like 4 times in a row and it was not letting me skip. And it feels like a very like awkward like break in the very middle of the game, and it's a required one unless you get that lucky skip option that I didn't. Still, I found the story of Prim to be very charming, the puzzles to be pretty interesting as well. And if you are, once again, a fan of more the puzzle side of the point-and-click adventure genre, then you should give this one a try. So with that, we're going to wrap up this double review. Both games were played with press keys provided by the respective developers. If you took your game for a future stream and showcase doesn't involve pointing, clicking, or puzzles, please reach out. Let me know what you think about these ones in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you enjoyed the video, do the YouTubing stuff, be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon, and you're interested in more in my thoughts on design, check out my game design books.